Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up, a look at who owns Jerusalem. Stay tuned. Jerusalem captures enormous press given its size, but not significance. It is the city often tied in to religious claims based on the world's three monotheistic religions that trace their roots back to Abraham: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Significant events have taken place in recent times, relatively speaking, that surrounds the question, who owns Jerusalem? Since World War I, critical documents and declarations have been signed. We'll address those. Our topic today is a complex one, not to mention an emotional one. My guest is Dr. Jaques Gautier, an international lawyer and academic who has spent the last 2 decades studying the rights to and ownership of Jerusalem. Once again, our lines are open for you to call in at any time with any of your questions or your comments, and don't be shy. Dr. Gautier, it's great to have you on with us today.
It's a privilege to be with you.
I am very intrigued by your work, and before I even ask my first question, there's a document I have here, a very heavy one that I want to show our audience. Take a look at it. Very heavy document indeed. Look at this thing. It's over 1,000 pages, and this is the work, Dr. Gautier, that you have done on your own.
Well, I started this over 20 years ago. At that time, I had no idea the amount of energy and time it would take to complete something that was comprehensive, because my aim was to look at the legal issues, to ascertain who had a valid claim legally. But you cannot deal with the legal aspects when you're tackling Jerusalem without looking at the history, without looking at the religious underpinnings of the various claims. And since this was intended to be a doctoral thesis, a scientific document, and I was told that everything had to be supported and defended, the end result was the 1,300 pages and 3,250 footnotes. I was not enjoying a lot of the technical work that had to be done, but looking back now, I think it's been helpful to have spent this much time looking at all the aspects of the issue.
What an enormous undertaking. And you are an international lawyer, and much of your specialization deals with human rights issues.
I have been studying international law for over 30 years, and I am a practicing international lawyer. But these questions involve human rights, as I will explain later.
Now, there's a lot to discuss over the next hour, but if you can explain on a surface level, there was a lot of emotions attached to who owns Jerusalem. Arabs making one claim, Jews making another, and somewhere in between. I'd like to know what your comment is about this.
Well, when you look at the claims, when you look at the basis for the claims, you have to start with the following statement. There are many claimants, and if you look at the history of the three religions, there's no doubt that there are valid grounds for the claims, whether it's from a religious perspective, for Jews, for Christians, for Muslims, that there are valid grounds for the claims from a historical perspective for all three religious groups. But the difficulty is to set aside the faith arguments, to set aside the purely historical attachments and connections, and focus, for me, on the legality of the issue.
Yes.
Who has the most solid legal claim? Who has the title, the right to say that we are title owners vis-a-vis Jerusalem? That's what I was searching for. And it was like putting together 10,000 pieces of a puzzle. When you undertake research on Jerusalem, and if any of the viewers intend to do that, it's often exasperating. It's often discouraging, because so many have written on the subject, whether it's from an historical, religious, or legal point of view. However, I discovered that there were so many contradictions, so many different conclusions, that somehow somebody had to be wrong. And that's why it took so long to put this puzzle together. But in the end, I reached certain conclusions, and I feel very comfortable in defending these conclusions as to who acquired the rights.
And as a lawyer, you certainly investigated both sides. Now, one thing for you watching that's very important to establish today is to give you a little bit of history. Now, we're going to try to make this as brief as possible, and it's not going to be presented in a way that will make you think you're in a history class, so to speak, but it's important to give you a bit of background because this is all part of the work that Dr. Gautier is doing in order to establish the case about who owns Jerusalem. Now, we have some billboards that we want to show you, and we're going to start off first, Dr. Gautier, with the first billboard that we have up here. Now, according to this one here, if we could have a close-up on this billboard, the subtitle here says, Jewish suburbs established since June 1967 beyond the Green Line, and Jewish suburbs developed prior to 1967.
Yes, it's important to understand that although my focus is the old city of Jerusalem, in a few moments I'm going to explain to you why it is such a bone of contention. But the old city is part of a municipality, the municipality of Jerusalem. And if we look at the municipality today, the boundaries were expanded after 1967, you will see that there's a line here which is referred to as the Green Line, yes, which divides what some refer to as East Jerusalem from what others refer to as West Jerusalem.
Okay, so we're looking at this line here.
That's
on
right.
The screen.
And it's important to understand what the Green Line really refers to. And it's considered by so many people to be sacred. And even jurists will make reference to the Green Line as if it was a sacred line in international law. In fact, it was the result of an agreement between Israel and Jordan in April of 1949. And there's a particular clause, Article 2, in that treaty that was signed. It was the Armistice Agreement, which says that this is a line that is not intended in any way to prejudice the rights, the claims, the positions of the parties. It's simply a military demarcation line. And yet today, whether you look at General Assembly resolutions, Security Council resolutions of the United Nations, that line keeps coming up. You have to understand who the claimants are today.
Yes.
Although there are many with claims, the principal claimants are Israel, the nation of Israel, and the Palestinians who
Yes.
inherited certain rights when the government of Jordan in 1988 gave up its claim to Jerusalem and transferred whatever rights they may have had to the Palestinian Authority, to the Palestinian people.
Okay, so are you ready for the next one?
Well, I think we can look at the, before we do though,
Yes.
it's important to note that in East Jerusalem, as we refer to it, all the blue dots, the blue areas, are now Jewish communities which have been built and expanded after 1967. So although East Jerusalem is often referred to as Arab East Jerusalem, it is in fact an area which is a mixture now of Arab communities and Jewish communities.
Okay, so let's look at our next diagram here.
Why my focus on the old city of Jerusalem? This is a subject that could take me the next 2 hours, and we don't have that.
Yes.
So in a few words, you have to understand that what you're looking at here, which is subdivided in 4 quarters, the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Jewish quarter.
Okay, now just for our viewers here, this is here is the Christian quarter, the Muslim corner, the Jewish corner, and the Armenian quarter here. And here is a real point of dispute, and that's the Temple Mount,
That's Temple
that
Mount.
all of the three religions,
Many would refer to that
claim as their holy point.
Yeah, the ultimate powder keg, the most sacred of sacred areas, certainly for the Jewish people, but also sacred in Islam,
Right.
and sacred for Christians for other reasons,
Right.
is the Temple Mount. Now, why is the old city such a controversial area of Jerusalem? Why is it such a bone of contention? You have to understand that if you took pictures of Jerusalem over the last 20 centuries, until the latter part of the 19th century,